Hello, welcome to These Little Treasures Made by You. In this video we're going to be making this gorgeous big Lola doll and her little bunny outfit. So let's get started. In the kit, once you've unwrapped it, you'll find yourself 5 pieces of doll parts already sewn up. So you have 2 legs, 2 arms and a head and a body. They'll come to you turned in the wrong way. So the first thing we need to do is turn them into the right way. Do this just like turning a sock. First tip of the day. This is something I would call essential for doll making. It's great for turning things in the right way. It's great for fiddly bits. It's great for stuffing. And what it is, just a regular old, really cheap $2 shop paintbrush. And it's got very stiff bristles, which I have chopped the end off. And you'll find that those stiff bristles are a great surface for keeping your stuffing in place and for being not going to push a hole through the end of your doll if you push too hard. So that's what I like to use, especially for the big doll, which my hands aren't quite long enough to get into all those places. So there we go. Turned in the right way. Let's begin stuffing. Roll down the body like that, just to make it easier to get into the head. And a little tip about the stuffing, I like to use this polyester craft toy fill. I find it's the best, especially for a big doll, because it's nice and light, but you can still get a nice consistent firmness to the doll. There's lots of stuffings on the market that you can buy. Ones that I've used before, recycled filling is also really good, and it's great for the environment because they're recycling plastic bottles. I prefer this one for a big doll just because the recycled filling tends to be a bit lumpy and bumpy, which shows up in a larger doll. You can also get corn filling as well. That is great and it's better for the environment. Big doll, it's probably a bit too heavy, so I would go with this one to start off with. So starting off, we just take handfuls of filling, push them into the neck cavity, and this is where your stuffing tool comes in handy, because you need to get into those crevices right up the top. If you don't get those crevices first, when you first start, it's really hard to go back and fill them in because you'll find that it makes everything a bit lumpy underneath. You'll be amazed how much stuffing toys take if you haven't made one before, especially a large doll like this one. It just seems to use up endless amounts of stuffing. But if I didn't say so before, 500 grams is about the right amount to buy for this project. You'll probably have some left over from that, so maybe for a couple of projects that will be good. Right, so stuffing the head takes a little while, but this is the most important part, because if you don't stuff her right, she might look a little bit funny in her face. So the next bit is to do her cheeks. So as you can see, we've sort of filled up the top of her head. I like to use a combination of my tool, just putting a bit of pressure here and making sure all those top crevices are nicely filled out. And then once the top section of her forehead is done, you sort of work down the face. Her cheeks are the next part to make sure they're nice and full. It's good to use your fingers as well, because your fingers will tell you where the gaps are. Did I tell you it uses a lot of stuffing? It uses a lot of stuffing. You're not quite sure how much stuffing it actually uses until you unstuff one, and then you realise so much stuffing comes out. You just think, wow, how did that all go in there? But it does. Okay, so you can see now her face is starting to fill out nicely. All around here is nice and firm, still soft, but nice and firm. You've got no wrinkles where it might show you that there's a bit of gap in the stuffing. And that's what you want. Firm, but soft with no gaps. Now I go to this center part here. So we've filled in all around there, so in that shape. Now it's like this last triangle piece. So starting at the top there, I can feel there's a gap. Just working down towards her nose. Still stuffing going in. But she's starting to take shape. You can see her little face coming to life now. It's the bit that I love the most. And they start to look at you and have a little face. Okay, so now we've filled in this triangular bit in the middle, and she's looking like she's nearly done. And I like to just check to make sure that that part looks nice and round. If you don't fill in that part enough and it's flat, she doesn't look as cute. She looks pretty cute, I think. So far so good. Right, now we're just going to continue stuffing down the neck area. And I can feel there's a bit of a gap right here, which is a very easy part to miss because it doesn't show up obviously like there's missing stuffing. So you really do have to sort of put your finger in and you can feel that there's a bit more room in there. And I just find, particularly with Lola and her face, when you fill out those little bits, that's what makes her look cute. So don't forget those bits. You'll be happy when you fill them in and she looks cute. Now that's better. Now she looks like Lola. Well, I think we've used just half the stuffing in her face alone. Right, we've done her face. So now we're up to a really important part that you probably don't know about because it's hidden inside, but it's a little secret that I'm about to share with you. This, which is in your kit, is her neck support. And her neck support's really important because she has such a little thin neck and quite a big face. It doesn't matter how much stuffing you put in her neck, eventually it will separate and she'll get the floppy head syndrome, which is not my favourite, especially when you prop a doll up on a bed. And it's not nice to see them looking a bit sad with their head flopping down. So I use this, it's a bit of a secret weapon, so that doesn't happen. So what you do is you take your stuffing tool, and look, if you haven't got a paintbrush, I would recommend next a wooden spoon, which most people have in their kitchen. It's just good because it's got a nice rounded wooden edge and it's good for gripping the stuffing as well. So pop the wooden spoon or your paintbrush right through the center, making like a drill hole. Take that out and then immediately pop in your neck support, and that should go all the way up to the top of the head. So that's nice in the center, and then we keep stuffing the neck. And what I like to do is take a piece of stuffing and pop it right through the center of the neck support. and stuff around it. Oops. Just continue. Getting the neck nice and firm is really important, and it's probably the trickiest part of the whole stuffing process, just because it is something a little new, I suppose, to sort of stuff around a pole in the neck, but you'll get the hang of it. Okay, so I like to sort of stand Lola on her head to do this bit and stuff upwards, if you like, making sure, you see all around there, that it's stuffing evenly. And what you don't want to do is get like a wrinkle happening. So you've just got to make sure that you've got enough stuffing in there that it fills all that part out. Okay, can you see that's nice and flat through there, and the same at the back, and you can't feel any neck pole. It's all nicely buried in there in amongst the stuffing. All right, and I can just see a little crinkle starting to form in her neck. That's where this comes in handy. Just to sort of pop it up there and just push in a little bit more to keep it nice and firm. Now, if you're going to do that, just be really careful to do it gently, because it's very easy to overstuff one area and then get a hard lump of stuffing, and it's quite difficult to undo that. So just be aware when you're pushing anything into a gap, just do it with a little bit of softness. It's definitely a technique to stuffing. I would say it took me 5 years to get the hang of it and just sort of understand the stuffing and what it wants to do and what's not good to do. So hopefully I can share those tips with you and make it easier, so you don't need to take 5 years to learn how to do it. Okay, she's nearly done. So when you get to maybe 2 centimeters from the bottom, just stop and leave a gap there, because that's where we're going to hem the bottom so we can put the legs on. And we need a little bit of gap to put her legs in. This is where her legs will get sewn on. So once you've got to about that, that's a good place to stop. So let's continue now with her arms and her legs. Turning the arms in, you'll find there's a gap in the sewing at the back of the arm. The arm's a little bit tricky to turn through, so you start with flipping the top part through first. I like to use the smooth other end, just to very gently, don't push hard or you'll go through the seam. Put out those edges so that they're nice and flat. And then turn the rest through. I would recommend, again, using your tool, very gently, just prying it out the other way. I have put through holes so many times. I'm not thinking and just pushing too hard. So be careful you don't do that. Right. And we might as well do the legs while we're turning it through. These are super easy. Take the other end this time. There we go. Now we continue stuffing. Same technique, little balls, smaller this time, smaller balls of stuffing. Pop them into the opening, taking the bristle end of your stuffing tool. So start with a pretty small bit when you do the arms because you want to fill up that very narrow bit at the end first. Small bits and then get bigger. Now, stuffing tip. The arms and the legs are really easy to stuff it so that each bit of stuffing you put in is obviously a separate bit. It gets these kind of gaps in the middle and you just find it lumpy. My tip is kind of hard to explain, but you want to get your stuffing tool right in the center of the piece you've just put in and gently holding it, supporting it with your other hand like that. I like to just gently push it down so you can feel that gap disappear. If you just hold it from up here and push the stuffing in, it's very easy for it to be all separated, kind of like that. See that lumpy effect? And the more you push in, you won't get rid of that gap. It'll stay and it'll just look even lumpier. A bit like the doll's got cellulite. So you just want to push really gently. Did you see how that gap just disappeared? But don't over push it either because then the same thing will happen. You'll get a hard lump there. You'll feel it. I always feel it with my other hand. Does it feel consistent and soft but firm and even? That's what you're aiming to do. When you get to the gap in the arm, stuff in the other direction, the top of the arm, again, making sure that goes right to the top. It's nice and smooth and even up there. And then the last bit is just filling in that gap between the two. The tendency with the gap in the arm is to not want to fill it too full because you think, oh, the stuffing's all coming out. But we're going to hand sew that shut. So try and make sure that that part is stuffed just as much as these parts. Even though the stuffing might want to come out the hole a little bit, that's okay. We'll deal with that. Okay, same process for the legs. Balls of stuffing, a little handful. You'll definitely need to use your tool for the legs, unless you have really, really, really long fingers. All the way down. Don't forget, right at the tippy toe. Sometimes I forget that. It's really annoying. You finish the leg, and there's a big gap at the toe, and it's too late then. You have to take all the stuffing out, start again. It's really annoying. Getting the stuffing out is kind of like trying to get toothpaste back into the toothpaste bottle. It's pretty hard. Easy to get it in, not so easy to get it out. Okay, now that we've stuffed all the parts of the doll, it is time to assemble her. So the first thing we do is stitch up the gaps in her arms. So you take your needle and thread, matching thread, start at one end. I like to just close it, hold it closed with my other hand and just do a basic stitch. As neat as possible. I'm not the best hand sewer in the world, but we put the opening at the back of the arm so it's not so noticeable. Two arms done. Now time to put the legs onto the body. So what we do is take the hem, just tuck that up about 2 centimetres, just so you've got maybe 1 centimetre left between the label and the bottom. And you can press this with an iron if you like, it just holds it in place better. Seeing as I don't have an iron right here, I'm just going to do it without. So, important part of this process is to make sure when you put your legs in, put them inside the doll with the hem tucked up, that you line both of the feet up so they're nice and even. You don't want to sew one leg up higher than the other, and that is really easy to do, let me tell you. So once they're nice and lined up, the other thing, little tip that I have for you, is just turn her feet in a little bit. She looks more like a doll with her feet kind of going in than going out. So just roll them in a little bit. And once you're happy with the placement of both legs, I'm just going to push that stuffing down a little bit more there. Face it towards me, make it easier. Pin them in place. When you pin them with the pins going vertically so you don't have to take them out when you machine sew it, so that your machine can go just straight over the top. If you pin them that way, then you'd have to take each pin out as you sew because the head of the pin will get stuck under the foot. That's just my little tip. If you're happy to take the pins out as you go, that's fine as well. I just like to keep the pins in there so that I know that the legs aren't going to move about. Now, making sure when you pin that you're getting the back of the hem as well and in the same place as the front. I like to pin it really well, 3 pins in each leg. That way I know that when I sew, there's nothing, it's not so much the top that you've got to worry about, it's what's happening underneath. So make sure that both sides are nice and even. Before I machine sew the legs on, and look, you can do it by hand if you would prefer. If you're not experienced on the sewing machine, probably best to hand sew it on, just because with the stuffing and the pins and everything, it can be a little tricky. So if you feel more comfortable hand sewing the legs on, that is absolutely fine. Just do a nice firm stitch to make sure that those legs are firmly in place. I'm going to show you on the machine, but before we get to that bit, we'll put the arms on. The arms are done by hand. This is where you'll need to get your big doll needle out. Excuse, mine's got a little bit of a bend in it. I've used it so many times. And your nice thick mattress thread. I like to take about an arm's length of thread because I actually double it over to make it even stronger. So here's the technique. Making sure the seams are facing towards the back of the doll. You start by putting the needle in through about 2 centimetres from the top and right in the centre of the top of the arm, from the front of the arm to the outside of the arm to the inside of the arm. And then you go back in, so your knot is showing on the outside of the arm at this point. Back through, out where the knot is, take your metal button, put your button on, and then put the button or put the needle back over the top of the knot and back through the centre of the inside of the arm. Pull all the way through, and that button will then cover up that knot. Now, placement for the arms is entirely up to you. So you could sort of hold the arms where you like it to be, whether it be up higher or down lower. But you can see there is a curve of where her body comes out. I like to put the center of the arm about 1 centimeter into that curve, and going in through the seam and out through the other seam as evenly as you can. Now take your other arm and do the same process, making sure the seam is facing towards the back of the doll. Go in the inside of the arm to the outside of the arm, taking your button. Same process through the arm, right back through the doll. Come out the other side where the thread is, back through the arm. Tricky bit, it's just getting that needle to go all the way through the button, which is why the long needle is really essential, because otherwise the needle gets lost inside the doll and that's not handy. I would suggest another 2 times. Just pulling the arm out a little bit so you can see where the thread has already been. You want to go through the same spot. Through the button. Nice and firm, but not too tight, because otherwise she'll look a bit squished and her arms go out to the side. So just so that they're nice and firm, that if you were to lift it up, it stays there. One more time, back through. This time don't go through the armhole, the arm itself. And I just like to twirl that around the actual sewing of the arm and then make a knot on the inside so you can't see it. Double knot. Not good at knots, so I have to concentrate. 1, 2, pull it tight, and then thread it back through the doll so that the thread is nice and snug inside and it's not going to come loose. And there we are. She has her arms and she's about to have her legs. Okay, so now you've assembled your doll, we're up to the embroidery. This is the thread that I like to use, Madeira embroidery thread. I think it's available everywhere. Just choose whatever colour you like, a nice pink for the cheeks and whatever colour you want the eyes to be. We'll start with the cheeks. I always use 2 strands, and don't make it too long or it could get tangled. You're better off to just have enough to do 1 cheek, which is about that much. So insert the needle with a knot at the end, at the back of the ear. This will get covered up by the hair when you put it on. Oops, sometimes that happens. I'll just make a little extra stitch here for reinforcement. Okay, so pushing it all the way through to the front, we're just going to do a little running stitch in a circle, just in and out through the top of the fabric. Forming her little rosy cheeks. If you wanted to trace a little circle on in tailor's chalk, so you know where you're going, or you can just freehand it as I'm doing right now. To knot the embroidery off, go back through to the back of the ear. Always have your thread disappear inside the doll, makes it extra secure. And then repeat the process on the other cheek. Right, so that's the cheeks done. Now we do the embroidery on the eyes. So same process, starting sort of at the top of the back of the ear, where it's going to get covered up by the hair. Push your needle through to the outer corner of the eye, and just underneath where the black printing is, take 2 big satin stitches straight across. And back where you left it, I like to just do a little bit down into the eye as well, so that you can really see the colour. 2 satin stitches there as well. Back in, back to where you started from. And secure it with a knot. Okay, now that you've assembled your doll, it's time to put the hair on. So take your felt piece that you would have cut out from the pattern and also your matching yarn, and we start. Oh look, I have taken off Lola's bunny hood to show you the finished product, what we're aiming for. So there's the felt piece sewn onto the back, and then the yarn forms the fringe and the piggy tails. So that's what we're doing right now. Step 1, place your felt piece right in the centre of Lola's head. At the back, close up the dart so that the dart is closed and that the front of the felt just covers the top of the seam on the head. Making sure it's in the middle. And then you can go and pin that in place. Once you've pinned that in place, take your needle and thread. Single thread should be fine, but if you have a fairly dubious quality yarn, I would suggest doubling it. There's nothing worse than you get to the end of sewing it on the head and the yarn breaks and you've got to start all over again, or the cotton breaks I should say. If you've got a good quality one, single thread is definitely easier. Starting at the back in the middle and using a running stitch, or you can use a back tack if you prefer, but I find that running stitch is adequate to hold it onto the head. Just take little stitches all the way around, 3mm stitch, 3mm space, and about a couple of millimetres in from the edge of the felt. And keep going all the way around the head. Taking out the pins as you go so you don't jab yourself like I've done a million times, which is annoying. Now just a little word on felts and their different quality. This is craft felt, which is just the sort of standard that you find in craft shops and sewing shops. It's made out of acrylic. It's nice and soft, it's nice and pliable, comes in lots and lots of colours. So if you're looking for a very particular colour for Lola's hair, or if you've already got the yarn and you're trying to match the felt to the yarn, that's a good one. It comes in pieces as well, so you just need to buy one piece basically. But if you want a specific colour, or if you want to do wool hair, wool felt, I should say. Wool felt is really beautiful. All felts will pill, so don't think you're going to buy one felt over the other because it won't pill. They pretty much all pill, and you just have to maintain the pilling with a pilling comb. If you don't mind the look of it, I mean, it is hair and it is a doll, then it's fine. Don't worry about it. But if it's just about the colour that you're going for and you want to dye your own, then I would definitely suggest buying the wool felt. Number one, it comes in a lot of different colours that are a lot softer than the acrylic felt. And if you'd like to dye your own, then wool is the way to go as well. There's lots of beautiful shades you can get from using an avocado pip or different natural dyes. There's heaps of tutorials on it on YouTube. You can have fun creating your own colour. But for now, we are going with this colour, and it matches perfectly the yarn that I've got, so all good. Come to the last little section of the edge. Then we just stitch closed the dart. And you should have lined it up when you pinned it so that that was touching anyway. Hopefully you did, because to try and pull that together is a bit difficult at this stage. You'd probably have to unpick it and start again. But felt is at least a little bit pliable, so if there is a bit of a gap, it will take a little bit of stretching together just to make that nice and neat at the back. There's part one done. Now we'll do her piggy tails. So take a piece of cardboard. You can just cut out a piece of cardboard. I tend to use a lid of a box because I quite like to be able to wrap the hair around the lip of the box. I don't know why, I just do. But whatever the length of whatever you're wrapping with is, that's going to be the length of Lola's piggy tail. So just bear that in mind. However long you want it, make sure that that's the size that you cut or use for your wrapping tool. So take your yarn, and we're going to wrap approximately 25 to 30 times around. Okay, that's 25. Holding the bunch firmly. Oh, that's why I like the lip, because it's really easy to do that bit. There you go. There's my tricky tip. Pop that away. Now take one of the strands, find approximately the middle. So there's your piggy tail right there, so it actually forms double the width that you've just wrapped. There's the middle. Take your strand and tie it up really firmly. Double knot is good. Now that the felt is sewn on, we'll be putting on Lola's piggy tails. So this is the hairstyle here we'll be doing today, but you don't have to necessarily do that. You can put high piggy tails, you could put one piggy tail, you could put one on the side, whatever you like. But today we're going to do these two low piggy tails for the purpose of this video. So take a wool needle. Make sure the wool needle though has got a pointy end, not one of the proper wool needles that's blunt. You do need to have a sharp end. And a good length of the yarn you just use to make for the piggy tails. Now, starting at the back of her ear, put the needle through just the felt, not the fabric, and tuck the knot underneath so that you can't see it. Now we're going to back and forth and make her a fringe. So again, come to the centre of her forehead, but just through the edge of the felt, not through the fabric. And we're going to make our way back and forth. Don't pull it too tight, just have it so that it sits nicely flat on her forehead and quite close together on the edge of the felt. Just a little bit of advice on the yarn. two yarns that I use are either a pure acrylic or a pure wool. I use these yarns because they have a nice texture. Wool is always the best, but it's twice or 3 times as much as acrylic yarn. So it all just depends on your budget and what you like. I wouldn't recommend doing anything too silky. So it's got to have a nice woolly texture basically, which a lot of the acrylics do. And I just find that the acrylics come in so many different colours, so you can really match to the exact colour that you want and also match to the felt colour that you've got for the back of her hair. And of course the wool is always beautiful and natural as well, so just depends on what you want really, but wool or acrylic, and I would say you'll have a good result. Now we've finished one side of her fringe, and I'm just going to pop a knot there, and then I'm going to put the needle through and come out at the back about where you want the piggy tail to go, because that's what we're going to use to tie the piggy tail on. And just leave that hanging for the moment and then repeat the process on the other side. Right, so once you've finished that, it's time to put our piggy tails on. So you take one of the strands that you've left hanging, just thread your needle with that strand. Hope you're better than me threading. It's not my favourite. And just go through the piggy tail right at the point where you've put the knot. It's a bit tricky, this bit, because it is good if you can go through the fabric as well as the felt, just to make it nice and secure. So you sort of have to dig your needle in and pull on it a little bit. So maybe just 3 or 4 times, and then a nice secure knot. And again, make your thread disappear. Nope. Bit tricky. That's so nice and secure inside there. And repeat the process on the other side. Okay, and there she is with her hair on. Probably just want to trim 2 ends of the piggy tails for a little haircut, make them nice and even. And she's ready for her clothes. Right, so first we'll start with the hat. You should have cut out your pattern pieces by now. There's a pattern for a bunny hat or for a teddy hat. You can see the difference there. It's just the ears basically and the placement of the ears. So you will have cut out a felt piece for the hat and the scarf, and whatever you like for the ears. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to show you slightly different ears from what this one is, just so you can see that there's variations that you can do. I've chosen to do some fur ears because fur is cute. Sometimes it's not always easy to come across good fur in the fabric shops, and it's quite expensive. And one of my tips is next time you go op shopping, or even if you look through your cupboard and you've got a coat there that you haven't worn for a while, chop it up, because coats and jumpers make the best furry ears, and you're using such a small piece that it's really a cost-effective way to do it. Then I have felt for the inner ear, and just to keep the ears upright, I've used this little inner piece, which is a bag felt. It's very, very stiff and solid. So anything that's going to give you a bit of rigidness inside the ear, keep them upright, will be good. Right, let's get started. Take your front and your back, 2 little wedges cut out for the darts, sew them up.
Good thing about felt is there's no right and wrong side, which makes it really easy. And also you don't have to finish the edges because they don't fray, and it's very sturdy. Lola's all about being played with in my books, so anything that's going to be sturdy enough to play with and look cute at the same time is all good. So same process on the back of the hat. Always remember to back tack when you start and when you finish. Make sure the stitches don't fall out. It's waving to a friend. Okay, so your front and your back piece are done. Let's get started on the ears. I'm going to do fairy ears on the back and felt ears on the front, and these little support bits go in after we're finished, so we won't worry about those for now. So if your fabric has a right and a wrong side, make sure you put the right sides together of the front and the back of the ear. Plain machine all around, about the seam width, about the width of the foot. So now just turn them in the right way. There they are. And pop your support pieces in. Unless you want floppy ears, you know, they're cute too. So if you don't want the ears to stick straight up in the air, just leave this bit out. The inside of the ear. So what we want to do is just tuck the two bottom edges in to each other, into the center. Now using a nice big stitch and very slowly on your machine, just baste across the bottom. That's quite thick for the machine to go through. If you're not confident doing this bit on the machine, just hand stitch it together to put the ears onto the hat. So front of the hat with the darts on the inside, put the ears on the top. Now again, this is quite thick for your machine to go through. Nice and slowly. You can hear my machine doesn't like it. So if you prefer just to hand baste it, it's okay. Come on, you can do it. There we go. It works. Okay, so back to the front now. Now, if you feel more confident to pin it, then go right ahead. Just match up your darts, so the darts should come together, the edges should come together, and nice and slowly around. Working with felt, it is easy not to pin it if you don't want all that mess of pins and getting under your foot. So I'm just going to go right ahead and sew it. Again, seam width about the width of the foot. Okay, there it is, fluffy on the back. Stuff goes everywhere. Get your vacuum cleaner out. Okay, scarf time. So there's one edge which is flat and one edge that's curved. With the curved edge, take the short curve and match it to the front of the bonnet. Right sides together, stitch in place. Repeat. And there's the hat, done. Let's move on to the skirt. So you should have cut 2 pieces of tulle for the tutu, and I have just sewn them together on the machine with a nice fine edge. So now we're going to gather the tulle to form the top of the skirt. Put your machine on plain stitching and at the longest length possible and the tightest tension possible as well, unless you have a gathering foot, in which case use the gathering foot. I find I don't like mucking about changing the feet, so I just use this method, which I think is quite effective and easy. So keeping about a foot's width away from the edge of the tulle. And don't back tack this time because we're actually going to pull the thread to make it gather. So just go straight in. And you can see how the tension is actually gathering the tulle.
Right, so once you've gathered your skirt piece to about 40 centimetres in length, you're ready to sew the elastic on. So cut your elastic to about 20 centimetres. I like to sew it on using the zigzag stitch because it's stretchy and that works better for something stretchy. So the technique is once you've started, just pull your elastic while you sew. Just lining up the gathers so they're nice and even as you go along. So nice full tutu skirt there. We're just going to join up the 2 ends of the elastic. Do that on the wrong side. No need to close the whole skirt. I find with tulle you can't really see that there's an opening at the back. So just on the elastic is fine. Done. Now for Lola's soft white tutu that she wears over the top of the other one. So once you've cut out your soft tulle, 2 pieces, and just join a seam, sewing them both together. Making sure that seam is on the inside, fold the whole piece in half, and go and find the end. So just in half, and what we're going to do is sew a seam that will form a casing so we can put the elastic in there. So make your casing about 1 to 1.5 centimetres. Just using a straight stitch this time. Make sure your tension is nice and loose because otherwise this really fine fabric, it tends to pucker it up otherwise. So just fold it as you go, making sure the two edges are together and keeping that casing width even all the way down. Well, finally got to the end. So now it is time to thread through the elastic. And for that you will need your bodkin or your large safety pin. And again, elastic at 20 centimetres. And going from the opening at the end, thread your bodkin through the casing. And you'll be doing this for a while. Tricky tip, only because I've done it so many times where you get to the end and all your elastic goes through. So I just like to secure my end with a pin, and then that way I can just concentrate on pulling the elastic through without it worrying about it pulling through where it shouldn't go. Okay, so once you get to the end, take both bits of elastic and join them on the sewing machine. Make sure it's nice and secure back and forth a couple of times. Even out the gathers. And you're done. Okay, moving on to the bodysuit. So you will have cut out your front and your back. As recommended, the back needs to be in stretch. The front can be whatever you like. I recommend something textured, something that looks interesting. And we will sew it together. Right sides together. A seam width of about foot width, half a foot width I should say. Okay, so now we're up to the leg warmers. I have included a pattern for these knitted leg warmers for all you knitters out there. I'm not a knitter myself, so I have also provided a pattern for some sewn up knitted leg warmers. So if that's you as well, you will have bought some nice stretchy knitted fabric that looks a little bit woolly. But any stretch fabric, cotton lycra, anything with a texture, even like a stretch lace looks good for the leg warmers as well. So right sides together, just fold it in half. That's your back seam right there. If you have an overlocker, super easy just to run a seam down. If you don't, just a nice long length plain stitch is fine. Again, making sure your tension is not too tight so it doesn't pucker it up. Now you'll notice that there's a wide and a narrow bit. The narrow bit is for the top of her leg and the wide bit is for the bottom. Just big feet. And they're done. Right, so the finishing touches we're up to now. So on Lola's bunny bonnet, she's just got some little accessories that go around her ears, and you can do whatever you want. This is time to have fun and get creative. So as an example, that's a lace trim that I bought that I've just going to sew some bits of fabric to, and they just tie around the bunny ears. You could do the same with pom-poms, or these make a great little cute accessory. These are just artificial silk flowers that you can buy from Spotlight or any craft store, and you just pull the flower off the stem, and there's like a ready-made little hole in there that you can use to thread through elastic or ribbon, which will give it a cute little effect. Well done! You've just completed your first large Lola Doll Masterclass. I hope you had lots of fun making this doll. I hope you enjoyed watching the video, and I really hope you are happy with the results that you've got now, a beautiful doll that you can give to somebody very special in your life. If you enjoyed doing this class, we will be releasing some more kits and more videos very soon, so please subscribe to our YouTube channel and stay up to date with every new release. And until then, thank you once again, and we'll see you next time. Bye.